Quarantine. I know, the word quarantine, a now dreaded word that makes us think of a period of unpleasant isolation and restrictions. Originally, quarantine means 40 days, and it lasts that long, but ours spanned over 2 years. Throughout many of our common and some of my personal quarantines during COVID at my previous school, we all went through this isolation. The isolation meant not going out, only seeing family members, experiencing the same environment every day, stuck in our little corner of the world. With very few things to do, I chose to do schoolwork and focus on improving myself. But not surprisingly, according to the American Psychological Association, isolation can bring depression, poor sleeping quality, impaired executive function, and accelerated cognitive decline. And they're right, it does do that. Those who have experienced isolation could tell you this without any research at all. We tend to think about the negative effects of isolation. But have you ever really sat down and thought deeply about what an extended period of time of tranquility, isolation, and self-reflection can do for you? Or how isolation can help us improve in our lives if we choose to learn from the experience? Today, I will tell you of the positive effects of isolation and how we can change our negative mentality through self-reflection. During my first quarantine at my school in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, my mentality transitioned from vigilance in physical school, where I would watch everything I would say and do, because I believed that in that school, the kids would judge me and what they thought of me could ruin my school life. 2, self-improvement at home, after I realized that the insignificant opinion of those people who criticized me and who did not give me advice was not something worth worrying over. Because being different from those of my own age and grade was not a bad thing. These discoveries were all made in my room, where I would always be in my head. I would sit around and distract myself with my thoughts. When I wasn't in my head, I would delve into the depths of social media where, coincidentally, others were going through similar self-reflections that shockingly helped me immensely and led me to a turning point. I would eventually start my reflection without social media later on. After the endless quotes, inspirational videos, and random people on the internet trying to motivate others, I would get motivated and learn more about various things like our need to be in society, which according to Mayo Clinic Health System is the need to have a sense of belonging, which is so important to us because of the groups and labels we give ourselves and others. Nearly every aspect of our lives is organized around belonging to something. I also looked at a few articles mainly relating to innovations and the economy that I started to aspire to achieve one day. But these spurs of interest would come and go in waves, although they always came back as well. All those interesting things gave me ideas of what I could achieve and a will to gain better control over myself, but none of them helped me with the reflection itself. One day, my father sent me a video of Denzel Washington, an American actor, director, producer, and man of color who probably had to endure many hardships. He said, "You will fail at some point in your life. Accept it. You will lose. You will embarrass yourself. You will suck at something. There's no doubt about it. But embrace it because it's inevitable." And since I thought I was failing, this resonated with me. After watching this video, I decided to work harder, try to enjoy my life as a teenager a little more, because even with quarantine, my country never really froze. And I also accepted that I have to be bad at some point to eventually be good at anything. My changes were most importantly thanks to self-reflection. And you might be wondering, what is self-reflection? Self-reflection is, according to BerkeleyWellbeing.com, a way to gain a better understanding of ourselves, our motivations, and our behaviors. Berkeley says that so many of our habits, patterns of behavior, and preset programming are buried in our subconscious. They operate in a sort of control room, which is our brain, directing how we think, feel, and act, oftentimes hurting our well-being. If we want to be in control, we need to look beyond the conscious mind and change some of the programming we no longer benefit from. One way to access the unconscious is through self-reflection, where we look at ourselves in the mirror, literally and metaphorically, and analyze what we see and feel as objectively as possible, so that we can better understand ourselves and how we think, feel, and behave. I use this mental process to grow my understanding of who I am, what my values are, and to analyze how I interact with the world. COVID was the perfect time to go through this process. After I had watched the Denzel Washington video, I decided to try self-reflection to clarify or find my dream and find goals to set for myself in order to achieve this dream. I discovered multiple ways to reflect on myself, like meditating in the morning to calm my mind, while also reviewing different aspects of my life, like love life, education, family, hobbies, or even fitness. Then I went to school and went through my day. At around 4 o'clock after school, I would take a walk in the garden with my thoughts, thinking about recent or past events. And at night, I would discuss my day with myself or my brother, and I would write down my thoughts and complete a series of breathing exercises before bed. During the time between the end of the major pandemic and my moving to my new school, I had gained more energy to exercise and interact with others, more self-esteem, a sense of deeper self-respect. I was happier, I would joke more, I would not be so afraid to express myself however I felt, instead of in a way that others would prefer, all thanks to my routine. My changes also helped to consolidate a social life. While preparing for this very TED Talk, my school librarian told me of a quote by the French philosopher Blaise Pascal. It says, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Since he wrote this quote during the 17th century, it is striking that it now fits perfectly in our era of smartphones and social media. It is repeated so frequently now, more than it probably ever was back then. Even if I had found my motivation for reflection with the help of social media, it was the time spent without it or other distractions that allowed me to evolve, the time spent with myself. Apparently, even in 17th century France, people hated being alone with their thoughts so intensely they do almost anything else, like play boules or pétanque in French, a game where they roll metal shot puts onto a sand lane to stop as close to a small cork ball as possible, or even start the Franco-Spanish War, and so on. Nowadays, we live in a world where we're connected to everything except ourselves. If Pascal was right about our inability to sit quietly in a room alone in his time, now this has increased multiple times over the years. Because now, according to an article from Medium.com, we can ask ourselves, why be alone when you never have to? Never being alone is not the same thing as never feeling alone. And the less comfortable you are with solitude, the more likely it is that you won't know yourself, which will lead to avoiding solitude even more, to focus on something else which will most likely be technology, and eventually we'll be addicted to something meant to set us free by enabling us to stay connected with any and everybody across the globe. Now, whether we act on those impulses, ideas, or urges is what differentiates us from the ones who can't stay still and think to themselves. That is the whole point of self-reflection. You learn different things about yourself and eventually learn to control those things. The self-discovery that could come from even a few days of self-reflection could be the reason you strive in the days, weeks, or even months after. It could even be an element that shapes the you of the future. Even if you might not remember the specific thought process you went through or what changed, but in the future, you will have changed. Thank you.